So let's talk about the answer to this question that's so common for people who are healing from their partner's affairs. Should I stay or should I go? And even if you're not making that decision, you may be making other decisions like, should we separate for a while? Should I ask them to move out of the bedroom? So maybe your question isn't quite that big, but I want to take you through some steps that I have found that can be really helpful in you coming to clarity about that decision. Now, it is such a huge question. It's literally like me going to a health coach and saying, you know what? How do I just get more healthy? It's a really big overarching, and there's a lot to it, question. But that being said, there are some things that I have found very helpful with the people that I work with to help you get clarity. And so I'm going to share with you 5 different things that you can do. Number one, my tools often come from working with a client who's in a lot of pain, who's sitting across from me. And this particular woman's husband had had an affair, and he had sort of said very casually to her, you know, I won't see her anymore, meaning the other woman. I won't see her anymore. And then she kept coming back to me, being triggered and triggered again, because she would hear about someone that they were talking together, they worked out the same gym together, and it just kept leaking in that he kept doing things that she felt were inappropriate and destructive to their relationship. This is an overarching recommendation for all of you when healing is to get a journal. It becomes so much easier to figure things out when they are written out. They get out of our head and onto a piece of paper. And that is surprisingly clarifying. So I've worked with a lot of people who are not journal writers, and a lot who are. But I'll tell you what I did with this woman that was so incredibly powerful that I use it with everyone who I work with. I said, take that journal. If you don't have a journal, at least have a piece of paper or a notes section of your phone, whatever is a good place where you will take notes. And we dedicated in her journal about the last 20 pages, and we used this magical post-it that says data. And I said, I want you to just have all your emotions you can write in the earlier pages of your journal, things you're trying to figure out and work through. But I want you to dedicate those last 20 pages or so of your journal to a section called data. And here I want you to imagine that you're like a scientist, and you're just writing down what happens, free from the emotional content. And I said, and bring that back, and we will look at it together. And it was extremely powerful. It doesn't make all the pain go away, but when we have more clarity, that's really, really helpful. And what happened was, her data was things like, he said he wouldn't see her and he went to her house. He said he wouldn't see her. My friends saw them at lunch. He said to me, we just needed one final conversation for closure. Okay, you guys see where I'm going with this. Not good. These are not the actions of a man who is ready to do anything that he can to save his marriage. So I want you to, if you're struggling with any kind of decision, I want you to have a place, ideally where you can handwrite, but if you're a person that's on your gadgets or a place in your computer where you simply write the data, and you're going to go back and look at it you've got to give it some time. You've got to give it a week or 2 or 3 or a couple months, okay? So data, number 1. Number 2 is get really clear about what you need for you to stay. So often in affairs, we are focused on them and out there. But I want you to get really clear, and that's another place that writing down in a journal can come in very, very handy. What do I really need from them or in this relationship for me to stay? A lot of people don't ask themselves this simple question. They're sort of bouncing around and reacting to things that are happening. Okay, so that one leads us to number 3, because you have to have done number 2 to implement number 3, and number 3 is extremely essential, and almost no one does it without me coaching them to. You've got to clearly communicate what you want and need. Right? So it's similar to boundaries, but slightly different, because maybe they haven't crossed your boundary yet, so there's not a reason to set a boundary. But you've got to be clear. It's like none of us would go to a restaurant and the waiter comes to the table and he said, "What would you like?" And we're like, "I don't know. I just don't know." And they come back and they say, "What would you like?" And we're like, "I don't know." And we give a bad rating to the restaurant because we say we didn't like that they didn't bring us what we wanted. That would be silly, but because of all the emotions and family and childhood patterns and unhealed places, it can happen a lot in relationships, and especially after affairs. And especially if you've abandoned yourself and not been good at it, which, by the way, most people I coach, even who are not dealing with this, most couples I coach, hugely struggle. Very few people are good at getting clear about what they want and then asking for it. It's the foundation of the incredibly rich, connected relationship I have right now. Number 4, have I done the work to heal my part? Have I done the work to heal my part? Because it is so easy to be looking out there, for sure, totally understandable, when you have been cheated on, to be like, they did this and they did that. But especially if you're many, many months or a year or more, it's so important. Affairs do not happen in healthy relationships. By no means did you cause their affair. No way, no way. But what was your part in creating the dysfunctional and probably codependent environment? Did you do too much for them? Did you do too little for yourself? Did you abandon yourself? Were you critical like I was? That's one of the things I had to take a long, hard, painful look at, was like what my criticism did to my first husband. And again, I didn't cause his affair. He did it. He could have said, Vickie, he could have said, Vickie, this is unworkable for me, your criticism. But he didn't. He acted out. So that was one of my parts of multiple different kinds of codependency that I had going on in my relationship. So have you done the work to heal yourself? And then lastly, number 5 is, in order to make any kind of decision, we need clarity. And one of the big things that obscures clarity is our judgments and upset. And one of the most powerful ways to clear that is to practice this radical form of forgiveness that I teach, called compassionate self-forgiveness, whereby you are forgiving yourself and beginning to release the judgments about what they did. Because when we are in judgment, we can't do the thing we need to do when we're trying to decide, should I stay or should I go? And that is to discern. Judging is in the painful, negative emotions, and discerning is the place we get to when we're more in a more peaceful and centered place. Not that you're going to get to a Zen monk state, but if you can even bring your upset down a few notches to get to the place where you can discern more than be reacting from upset, I hope you find that these 5 things will be really supportive to you on your path of healing.